Welcome to the next section of our course, using generative AI for software automation testing. And in this section, we are going to be talking about how we can make use of generative AI to perform API testing. We know that most of our time we will be doing API testing as a part of our regular testing activities. It's not just the UI testing, because the advent of these microservices and different third-party services that we are testing within our application, API testing plays a key role while testing an application, because you know that every single time while you perform an API testing, you need to have a complete infrastructure ready to be tested while the API needs to be tested. So let's talk about how we can make use of the generative AI to do this API testing in a more robust and better fashion. But before I go there, first of all, let's do some API testing with already available systems that we usually do. So if I just go to one of my application in the machine that I have got over here, this is the product API that I have got. And if I wanted to run this particular API over here, you will notice that it is just going to open this Swagger documentation over here. If you see this particular application over here, you have got the details of what this particular API is really doing. So basically, if you want to get the product by ID, so you just have to pass the ID over here, and if you hit execute, you will notice that it is going to give you the response of the particular ID if it has got any product for the particular ID. And if I pass 3 and if I hit execute, it's going to give me a product based on the particular ID. So let's say if I'm going to give 30, which I'm sure there is no product like that, so you're going to get a response saying success, but there is no value coming up over here. So you wanted to test all these API right now. So at the moment, this particular application you have got, it has got very less endpoints or maybe controllers, so it is just easy for you to test it. But what if your application has got quite a lot of different API and you have to test each and every one of them, like get operation, post operation, put, delete, update, and every single thing? So how do I actually test every single thing? Well, you can either use Swagger documentation, which is very straightforward, or you can use tool called as Postman. So Postman is one of the most popular tool which is used among community, which does this API testing in even more better fashion. And you can see this is one of the example of the Postman where I have got the collections for the product API. I've created that, and if I'm just going to do a get product by ID, which is this one over here, and if I wanted to see if this works fine, if I just do a send, probably the base URL is not quite right, so I'm going to choose the product API local, and then if I try to perform a send operation this time, looks like it's still not working. It says the wrong version number. So let's see what is going to really happen there. You can see that my API is HTTP instead of HTTPS. So probably that's the problem. So let me go to the environment over here and change it from HTTPS to HTTP. I think that's the problem. And if I just go to the collection and if I do a send, you should see that it just works fine. So this is how we classically do the API testing. We just perform the operation from a tool like Postman to do the test whether it works fine or not. You can also write some more Postman test if you wanted to in the test script tab over here. Guess what? There are even more AI features available within the Postman which does those things for you as well. So we're not going to go there at the moment, at least, but you got the idea, right? This is how things are going to work in the Postman if you try to query the API and you get the responses back. But the question is, how do we actually test these operation from this particular API into with the help of the large language model? So how is that going to be possible? Well, guess what? You can actually do this. You can just copy this whole path, or maybe you can also copy the structure of this particular path, like how the schema is, and then you can ask some questions to the ChatGPT to get this response back. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy that. I'm not going to go to the ChatGPT. Rather, I'm going to go to the offline version over here, if you remember the one that we were using before, and I'm going to ask some question this time with the Llama 3 8 billion instruct. So I'm going to say write the API test using some automation testing tool, and I'm going to be choosing what is called as REST Sharp if I wanted to. So I'm going to say REST Sharp. This is the C#.NET based API testing tool. So I'm just going to use that. I'm going to say REST Sharp for the API with body with a schema as this one. So I'm going to put that particular schema over here, and the endpoint is I'm going to pass the endpoint over here. So this is the endpoint for the get endpoint. So I'm going to say try to write all the possible scenarios for this. And if I hit enter, you'll notice that immediately it is now trying to write the code for me over here. So it's also writing a scenario like successful get request. So it's going to say like a request, which is going to perform a get operation. And this is the endpoint, which I'm passing in. And the header currently, because I have not passed any header information for this particular API, it just thinks that it's none. And the expected response is 200. Okay. And the body, which is going to be returning, is going to be a JSON value because you pass the schema as a JSON value. That's what it is going to do that. And you see that it also started writing the REST client code, which is the REST API code, which is the REST Sharp code over here. And it just all quite right. You see that it's just doing things for me over here for this get operation. And there is this invalid operation. So it has also wrote the invalid ID operation. If I pass something like 31, which does not exist, then it should return me 404 not found exception. And if I pass something which is like something you don't even have at all, like it should it should give you like a 500 internal server error. So it writes that scenario as well. Also the 400 bad request error. So all the edge cases are even being covered by just giving like what information that we gave. We just gave like a schema, a bit of a schema, and then we gave this particular endpoint, and it performed the entire operation for me over here. In our next lecture, we will see how awesome these GPTs become even more better while we give even more context to write the code. And also we can help ourselves to write some code which can be even more compelling, which we can use directly in our testing code.